Welcome back, guys, and in this video, like I said, we are going to go ahead and start implementing some of the things in that model view controller design pattern. And specifically to start, we're gonna create the model, and in this case, like I said, that's going to be the country. So let's go ahead and come over here and let's create one final group for this application, and we're going to call it model. And this is a pretty common group or folder to have in your application, because in a lot of applications, especially bigger ones, you're going to have a lot of different models. In this one, the only thing that we're actually going to worry about is the country, but let's go ahead and do that now. So let's create the model group, and then let's create a new file. It's going to be a Swift file. We're going to call it country. And we're going to create a struct just by putting that little keyword there, and it's going to be called country. And real quick before we dive into this, I just want to explain the difference between a struct and a class. So they essentially do very, very similar things. They contain data, and much like a class, a struct could also be a person, and a struct could even be like a substruct of another one. So it could be you could have a person, and then you could have or let's say like a worker, like a human worker. You could have a human worker struct, and then you could have a substruct of that, which would be like a software engineer, and then you could have a substruct of that, which would be like a iOS engineer or web engineer or anything like that. So why would we use a struct over a class? Well, a struct is basically something. The basic easy way that we describe it is a class is a reference type, and a struct is just a like static data type. So in other words, if we say that we have this class, and that class is a person, and that person represents me, for example, right? And then I create another variable, and I set the second variable equal to that class that was me. Well, now both of those variables point to the same class. So if you edit one, it's going to edit both if you're using a class, because a class is a reference type. So if I say, like I said, if the second variable, if I set that equal to the first class that I created, they're referencing the same exact object. It's pointing to a particular thing in memory, whereas a struct is just a data type. So if I did that same example, I created a struct, and then I set a second variable equal to the same struct, that is not a reference type. They are not referencing the same piece of data. They're actually just completely separate pieces of data. So basically, anytime that we don't need to pass around this data type as a reference, we're going to want to just use a struct. That's just going to make more sense. And if this topic is a little bit confusing right now, don't sweat it. You can even look at, like we did in the last video, you can Google it if you want to kind of see some better examples. But for sure, throughout this course, we're going to be using structs and classes a little bit more, and the use cases for each one will make a little bit more sense. So anyways, for now, let's go ahead and create this country struct. And a country is going to have four properties. It's going to have a name, which is of type string, and we're just going to make these constants because we're not actually going to change them once we set them. So we're going to have name, we're going to have population, which is going to be an integer. We're going to have an independence year. Did I spell that right? Independence year, yep. And that's also going to be an integer. And then lastly, we're going to have a flag image URL, and that's going to be of type string. Okay, now that we have that, traditionally in a normal application, there's two ways that we could actually get this data that we want to display in the application. We could get the data from like a server. So think like Facebook. Facebook might have a struct that is like a maybe like a post that a user made, but that information is not stored on the phone. You obviously have to have an internet connection to get the posts from Facebook. So you have to ask Facebook servers. The application needs to ask Facebook servers for that data. In this case, we're obviously not doing that. We're going to get into API. Those are called API requests. We're going to get into that a little bit later in the course. For now, we just want the data to come from within the actual application. So what we're going to do is we've got this country struct. Great, that works good. Let's go back to the table view controller. And what we're going to do at the top of here is we're going to create an array of countries. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to say let countries equal, and then I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this. I created this a little bit earlier. and we're going to have these countries right here. So if you need to pause the video, go ahead and do that, and you can copy what I have here, or you can come up with your own examples if you want. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So each of these countries has a name, it's got a population, it's got an independence here, and it's got a flag image URL. I just grabbed these flag image URLs from this countryflags.com website, which you can go to as well and see where I got these from. And by the way, if you are new to this sort of thing, what we can do is, let me go ahead and pull up this little website right here. I was not endorsed by this website. I just happened to find it useful for this sort of thing. So if we search for a country, for example, you can click on one of these. You can right-click the image and click Copy Image Address, and that's what we're going to use inside the application. That's what I put right here for the flag image URL. So if you just want to copy what I have, feel free to pause the video and do that. Or you can create your own list or add as many countries as you want. If I don't have your country in here, then feel free to add it in. But this is what we're going to use. So like I said, pause, and then we'll continue here in a second. Okay, cool. So now that we have these countries here, like I said, these are going to drive the data in the table view. So we can do a few things to get this a little bit more interactive. So we're still going to have one section as we had before, but now we're not just going to have 2 rows in that section. We want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rows in that section because we have 8 countries here, or however many you have. So the easiest way to do that is, instead of returning 2, we're going to return countries.count, and that's always going to give us an accurate number based on how many is inside this countries array. So we've got that solved, and in fact, if we were to go ahead and run that real quick, we're going to see 8 countries now, but they're not going to actually have the names in the array that we have. So the easiest way that we can fix that is we can say cell.namelabel.text equals countries, and then we're going to do the array brackets to access an index, and we're going to do index path dot item. So dot item is just referencing the so an index path is representing the section and the row. So by putting dot item, we're just getting the row for that index path. So basically you're going to get 0 through 7, I guess it would be, for each of these countries. So now it's saying we cannot assign a value of country to type string, and that's just because we need to do dot name. So countries at this index path dot name. So if this still is a little bit confusing to you and you're not really understanding exactly what's happening here, let's go over it one more time. Right here, we're returning the number of sections in the table view. Right here, we're returning the number of rows in there. And then this function right here is going to get called for each row and item that needs to display in the table view. So the first thing that this table view is going to do is it's going to say, hey, give me the cell for row at the 0 index path. And we're going to say, yeah, no problem. We're going to create a cell is going to be dequeued, which this is just a bunch of magic right here that Apple's giving to us for free, which is really cool. So we're just saying, okay, cool. We're going to create a cell. We're going to get that by dequeuing one, which is just going to get some reusable cell from the table view, and it's going to have this identifier. And then since we're going to be at the 0 index path, we want the namelabel.text to be equal to countries at the 0 index path dot name. And then we're going to return that cell. And it's going to say, cool, I got that. Now I need another one. Now I need the cell for row at the 1 index path. And we're going to get the same cell. And then we're going to set the name equal to the first item in the countries array, and then we're going to return that, and it's just going to keep going on and on and on. And then it's going to say I need the second, then I need the third, then I need the fourth, and it's just going to keep asking us for cells until it's rendered all 8 cells, and then it'll stop calling this function. So without me talking anymore, let's go ahead and run it, and we're going to see that we've got these 8 countries here now displaying. So this is a good point to stop this video. In the next video, we're going to create the detail view controller, and then we're going to navigate over to that when we click on it. So I'll see you in the next video.